So, Tree, come on. Tell me what we're doing in this chapter. This sounds nice and juicy. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. It's a step that a lot of times with connection we forget. And so some of you may have been out there thinking, "Oh, I have this really great team and we're really connected, but we're not so good." Right? And so I think when you can, first of all, you have to create a clear vision for where your team is going. I think, and this is something I learned from Dr. Elmore, very often what people are seeking out of their leader is just clarity. Like, where are we headed? And I will say, there's an image that I'll just share with you. If you think of, it's called Rivers and Floods, and it appears in the book, um, and it's a Habitude image. If you think of the body of water that is a flood, right? It's just everywhere. Like it destroys buildings, and it's sort of shallow, and there's just dangerous things kind of floating around in it, and it's toxic, right? But if you compare that body of water, and it's stagnant a lot of times, sometimes it's rushing, but it's really unpredictable. Conversely, if you think of the body of water that is a river, it's surrounded by banks, and it has a current flowing in the same direction. It's super persistent. It can cut really, really deep. It's powerful. It can power towns, and it can cut through mountains, right? And so if you think of that image and you frame, the importance of vision in that image, I think it's a really interesting and powerful thing to think about, because if you give me any upset or any dynasty, and I promise you they have a river-like focus, meaning they know exactly which direction they're headed in, and everybody on the team is very clear about the signal, and they're all following it. And that's the power of vision. It creates an anchor for everybody to aim for. And so I think it's not enough for you to just have that sort of, vague vision in your head. And I will say this: winning is never a purpose. It is absolutely always a result. So just like an organization, if they're out to make money, if that is their purpose in life as an organization, as a business, they will fail every time. Give it enough time, they will fail. I will say the same thing for teams. Winning is absolutely only data, okay? It's never your purpose. So yes, do we all want to be as good as we possibly can? For sure. That is where we're headed toward. But if you're out there just to see how many wins you can get, you're reading the wrong book, because it's not a thing. So, um, so team vision is really important. So you have to be crystal clear about it. That is number one. And so in the chapter, we sort of lay out why it's important, but then we sort of talk about helping you discover a clear vision for your team. And I will say, workbooks 1 and 2, if you haven't gone through the process of figuring out exactly who you are, first, and then what you want out of your program, this is sort of a moot point. You have to know authentically who you are as a coach. And you might not have it figured out. If you're early in your career, I certainly know I didn't. I still don't know. But you have to at least be doing those investigative practices, that values in, all those things that are presented in those first 2 workbooks will lead you to. And then we talk about discovering a clear vision and just sort of the power. And so there's some examples in the chapter. But then we lay out this 6-phase vision casting process that you can use with yourself and your staff. And that could be a fun separate thing to do, but you can also use it with your players. And I'll tell you, Generation Z longs to be a part of that which they helped create. They just want to be a part of helping to create it. It doesn't mean that they get to make up their own vision, but after you've laid out the vision, after you've articulated the vision, this is a process that sends them through. And this could go over the course of your non-championship season, or it could go over the course of a year, or you could condense it into a couple of weeks. But it's a process that includes them working almost on their own to lay out their lived practices. Where are we going, and how are we going to get there? And it's really fun. There's actually, hopefully we'll be able to include this video in the module. There's a video, I did this originally with a team that I've worked with for several years. And the video that the players created at the end of this is fantastic. And I'm not kidding, they really did follow this exact phase. So it's pretty involved, and you can, like I said, do it yourself or have them do it. But it's all about vision, baby. And if you have the vision and you're just laying it out on report day, or your first practice, I'm going to tell you what, they probably didn't hear the words coming out of your mouth, and it definitely didn't stick. So you have to constantly drip, drip, drip the vision into your season throughout the course of time.
Excellent. Well, I totally think that, this vision part is really, really important. And it's interesting because all the other chapters before this really build into how do you create a healthy vision. And what I mean by that is, you can have all the fluff of a vision and have it up on your locker room wall, kind of like your philosophy. But if it's not a living, breathing vision, like you're saying, you're constantly drip, 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 and they're not living the values of that vision, then it's just a bunch of words, right? So that's
Yeah.
why I think this chapter is really important. Is yes, you need to have this vision, but it has to be living, breathing. It has to be alive, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.